Hello and welcome to my channel. With me today, I have an interesting video of Professor Kaba Kamene, who talks about the real truth of white people, or rather Europeans. Now, in this video, he talks about the books that were written for people of European descent in order for them to understand what's happening through immigration. He says the same story applies in the United States and the time for Europeans is up. Now, he also talks about where the fear of the foreign and the fear of anything that doesn't look like you and talk like you came from. He goes on to say this is why some members of the Congress, the more fragile ones, are trying to pass laws now saying it is the European architect of society that should be America. Now, he talks about a lot of things in this video. More reason you need to watch this video till the very end. So here's the video as he explains all this.
Their time, people of European descent, their time is up. Don't need to go to the history of it. I would recommend that you go to my bio and go to my my webinar series. I did a 4-part webinar series on a movie I was in called Race War, and it's webinar number 2. Origin of the Caucasoid. We follow their history to the mountains of the Caucasus, to the mountains of the Himalayas, who were impacted by their climate in hostile conditions and lived like that for a couple thousand years. And this is where xenophobia, the fear of the foreign, fear of anything that doesn't look like you and walk like you and talk like you. And this is why some of the members of Congress, the more fragile ones, are trying to pass laws now saying that it is the European architect of society that should be America. In other words, people who speak Spanish, you must become like me. People who pray to Allah, who are Muslim, you must pray to my God. For those of you who are of Asian descent, you must follow our rules. And black folk, we don't even know what to do with y'all because you've been denying us from the beginning. But what the problem is this, is that with the movement of peoples of melanation to America and to Europe, this is happening in Europe. You want to know what I'm talking about? Don't believe a word I say. Check out a book that's titled The Strange Death of Europe. It's written by Douglas Murray. It wasn't written for us. It was written for peoples of European descent, particularly people in Europe, to understand what's happening through immigration. Here in the United States, the same story applies. And that is that, and again, don't believe me, just get a book called The Birth Dearth. Birthdearth. Don't believe a word I say. Study this for yourself. Understand what's happening. Because The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg tells us that immigration worldwide. Now, mind you, who they are now. Remember who they are. They were the first and original illegal immigrants in the world. They did not come with anything to give. Emma Lazarus, in her poem, Statue of Liberty, says it. Give me your tired, you're homeless, criminals. I mean, she may not have said that, but I'm saying it. You're criminals. You're sick. That's who came to America. Starting in 1870, not in the 1900s. It started in 1870 when they tried to displace black people who were rising from their position of enslavement, they were rising, and in order not to give the jobs and the education and everything to African people, they began to bring Europeans in order to hire them. They had as little regard for the immigrants they were bringing in, because you see, when the poor Europeans were going to Ellis Island, rich Europeans coming to America, the business people did not go to Ellis Island. They went to the Soundview section of the Bronx. That's where their boats went, to Soundview. The poor people went to Ellis Island. We're dealing with conditions that we now face that have been going on for a very long time. And what has happened is that because of the nature of their mutation from the original melanated African, the Grimaldi of Europe, transforming themselves into the Cro-Magnon, which is the ancestor to the Eurasian, because the Cro-Magnon now is going to mate with Cro-Magnon instead of going back to the archetype. You see, although a lot of folk, you may not like what I'm about to say, but this happens in nature all the time. We've seen it happen with gorillas. We've seen it happen with peacocks. We've seen it happen with roaches. We've seen it happen with plants. And that is that when you lose that nutrient, the ability to process melanin, you become albinoid. You become deficient in that nutrient, the process of producing that molecule we call melanin. When you become deficient in that, nature demands that you make up for it somehow. And the way it helped the Africans survive in that ice age for thousands of years was to depigment the skin. But in so doing, they also took away a lot of the melanin content within, known as eumelanin, which became in them what we call pheomelanin. Pheomelanin. And so they come back down across, but they only mate with themselves. So what's happening now is that a mutant is commingling with a mutant, which is taking the product further and further away from the archetype of humanity. Because plants were born to be green, humans were born to be black.
Now, I want us to take a look at the books he mentioned in his video. The Strange Death of Europe. Douglas Murray, a well-known writer, journalist, and associate editor of The Spectator, takes his readers on a journey through Europe. From his native Britain through France, Germany, Sweden, Greece, and Italy, his detailed travelogue describes and analyzes the effects of both the incremental increase of mainly Muslim immigrants from Africa, the Middle East, and countries such as Pakistan and Afghanistan over several decades, and the unprecedented recent massive wave of immigration since 2015. Now, the ongoing transformation of European cities and, in some cases, even the countryside by the presence of new population groups leads him to assert that Europe is committing S-side, or at least its leaders have decided to commit S-side. Now, this sea change that has taken place has brought with it many difficulties and challenges, the major one being the replacement of the local populations with the new immigrant groups, many of which do not appear to have minimal inclination or desire to integrate into the surrounding society and culture and absorb democratic norms and behavior. According to Maury, the population of the neighborhoods and refugee shelters consists mainly of unmarried and unskilled Muslim young men who maintain the attitudes of their homelands, such as intolerance of those who disagree with them on political and religious issues, misogyny, anti-Semitism, and prejudice against homosexuals. In addition to this recent influx of immigrants are the many Muslim families who settled throughout Western Europe before 2015 and remain almost solely within their own cultural sphere. Their birthrights or birth rates rather, are significantly higher than those of the native Europeans who do not reproduce themselves. Many immigrants are unskilled, are not gainfully employed, and receive welfare benefits from the state. A growing number engage in criminal activities, including the abuse of women and girls. They are well represented in prisons. Others turn to radical Islamist organizations and become terrorists. Now, The Strange Day of Europe eloquently describes a variety of locations and presents a plethora of statistics and figures. Mori also includes interviews with native Europeans of differing views on immigration, including politicians, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens. Some prefer to remain anonymous out of fear of political correctness or threats of violence. He also interviews immigrants in refugee camps in Greece and Italy, and in shelters in large cities in France, the United Kingdom, and Germany, and often is sympathetic toward them. He also points out the tensions between the different groups of immigrants. The book clearly depicts the ongoing crisis caused by this mass migration and its origins, namely the fact that the intellectual media and political elites encouraged this influx of a population, and that its immigration was not a decision voted on democratically by the peoples of the European states, but rather an unpopular position taken by the leaders with the approval and backing of the European Union. Why is Europe replacing its population and committing genocide through mass migration? According to the author, there are two major reasons: guilt and tiredness. West European leaders feel guilty for the colonialism of the past, with its overtones of white supremacy and its economic exploitation of African and Asian populations. In the case of Germany, and the Holocaust play an important role as well. Hence, the compensation by welcoming and coddling non-white, brown, or black-skinned migrants from the third world as expiation for the sins of the 19th and 20th centuries. Now, these migrants cannot be accused of any wrongdoing, even if they commit crimes of terrorism, rape, or unalivings. Mori notes the astonishing case of a young woman raped by a recently arrived migrant who regretted his arrest because it would harm the effort to welcome refugees. Now, Mori also focuses on the European condition of tiredness, a general feeling that the European story is over. He describes the socio-historical reasons for this disappointment with a totalitarianism, wars, and colonialism of the previous century, the failure of Marxism, liberty, prosperity, and the welfare state, the weakening of the nation state and national identity, and most important, the abandonment of Christianity, which provided the underpinnings of the European Enlightenment and secular culture. There is lack of hope and faith in the future. Okay, now this is really a long book, and I would advise that when people have time, maybe you can go and check it up so that you can have the whole explanation of what Mori was trying to explain in that book and the other book as well. But I think we now have an insight of what this book is all about and what the professor was trying to talk about. So what are your thoughts on this video? What do you have to say about this video? Kindly share your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video.